Shabbat Shalom. It is wonderful to be together again on a Friday. I love doing Shabbat story time. In fact, I love it so much, I thought, let's have a special treat. We're going to have a double feature, which you ask your grandparents what that means, because I don't even know how I know what that means. I like old-fashioned stuff. Double feature means you go to the movie theater and you would see two movies. So today we have two books. It's a little misleading. We're going to read this book. The pictures are so cool. I really wanted you to see the pictures. And we're going to read some parts of this book. That's going to be a little bit later. So as to not become distracted, put that one back. And of course, we are going to do Kiddush and motzi over a big loaf of challah, which is kind of funny because there's a holiday coming up where you don't get to eat any challah at all. And that is the holiday of Passover. You got it. Passover is coming up. Maybe you started buying some of the foods that you're going to need. Maybe you started learning about it in school. I know I'm starting to get really excited for Passover. We have so many fun Passover things going on at my house, at your house, at the synagogue. We've got a really cool family Seder on second night that you're all invited to. We even have some fun goodies we'll give you if you're going to come. So definitely make it. And I'm doing it, so that's really exciting if you want to come to that. That'd be cool. Anyway, let's read some books. Passover books. Now the first one, like I told you, is this one. It's called The Moses Basket. And I was kind of debating whether or not we should read this one because I thought, they know this story. Like, they know this story. They know the story of Passover. But here's the thing. When we're at the Seder and we're doing all the stuff and we're reading the Haggadah and whatnot, and we tell the same story every year then too. Every single year. I am older than you by a good bunch. And I have heard the same story every year for Passover. And I'm going to keep telling that same story every year for the rest of my life. And just because we tell the same story doesn't mean you don't get something new out of it every time. So I thought maybe you get something new out of this one. This one has really, really cool pictures. I really hope you enjoy the illustrations, because they are illustrations, of this particular rendition, this version of the Passover story. And it's called The Moses Basket. I'm going to try not to get any glare. See that glare? I'm going to try not to get any of that in. I'll do my best. So, first things first, The Moses Basket. I got it used. It used to be a library book. Look at these cool pictures. Wow. See? Really just amazing. Now, the pictures might look like this because, and remind you of, it looks kind of Egyptian because why? The Passover story starts in Egypt. As we say in the Torah, there was a new king, a new pharaoh in Egypt who didn't know Joseph. Joseph, our ancestor, was such a great guy, and the pharaoh loved him, and the Egyptians loved him. But a long time had passed, and then there was a new pharaoh in charge, and he didn't know who Joseph, the Jewish guy, was. He said, I'm not such a fan. And that's when things got really bad for the Jews. See, look at these pictures. There's the Jews. Long, long ago, in the land of Egypt, there were thousands and thousands of Hebrew slaves. Hebrew means slaves were Jewish slaves. Here. Hebrew slaves. Once they had been shepherds who roamed far and wide beyond the great river Nile with their flocks. But the powerful Pharaoh began to force them to build his temples, tombs, pyramids, palaces with bricks made from straw and mud and drag huge stones across the desert for pillars and walls. They worked hard. If they stopped to rest, the cruel overseers would whip them back to work. Not nice guys. And now the Pharaoh had so many Hebrew slaves, he began to fear that they might turn against him. Because how many pharaohs were there? One pharaoh. And how many Hebrew slaves were there? Lots and lots and lots of Hebrew slaves, lots of Jewish slaves. And he thought, there's a lot more of them than there are of me. And if they realize that I'm being a terrible person, they might realize that they could overpower me. So he began to get scared. So he sent out a terrible command. Every baby boy born to a Hebrew slave was to be thrown into the river. So he was not just a mean person, he was a very, very evil person, because only an evil person would say such a thing should happen. So we are not a fan of Pharaoh at all. Neither is God. But there was one mother who was determined not to let her little son go. There she is. "I'll hide him in the river," she said. "That is the last place Pharaoh's soldiers will go looking for babies. I will weave him a cradle out of papyrus reeds, and I will cover it with slime and pitch that will make it float like a boat." The baby's sister, Miriam, ran down to the river as the sun was setting and cut a huge bundle of reeds, staggered home with them as fast as she could. She wasn't all grown up. She was a kid. She was like a lot of you. And her mother said, "I'm going to make a little boat to put our baby in so he'll be safe. But you got to cut all these reeds." Can you imagine carrying all these heavy reeds in your arms? But you have to do it because it's really important. Her mother set to work at once. All night she wove the reeds with nimble fingers, shaping them firmly and tightly into a small cradle. Then she carefully covered every inch of it with slime and pitch. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she held her sleeping son for one last time. Then she laid him in the cradle and tenderly covered him up. Even the dog seems worried. The sun was slowly rising. They worked all night. They didn't even sleep. The great burning African sun, as Miriam helped her mother carry the little basket down to the river. Their feet made no sound on the damp, sandy ground. They walked very carefully. "Hurry, mother, hurry," said Miriam. "She'll be here soon." "Who will be here soon?" said her mother. "The princess, Pharaoh's daughter. I've often seen her bathing here early in the morning." They didn't have bathtubs inside, so if you wanted to take a bath, you had to go to the river. Going as fast as they can. "If the princess finds our baby, she'll kill him," whispered Miriam's mother. "No," said Miriam. "She'll save him." "How do you know?" said her mother. "Because I know things," said Miriam, gently stroking the baby's head. "Remember how the house was filled with sunbeams and moonbeams when he was born? I knew that he was special. But quick, help me set the basket afloat." It's true, there's a story about when he was born. A wonderful light went through the whole house. Together, mother and daughter waded into the shallow waters and gave the basket a gentle push. At once, the basket began to float like a beautifully made small boat, which is what it was. It must have been a very sad moment. Creeping through the reeds, they followed the basket with the sleeping baby in it. Above them, the sun slowly turned the river to gold. And then everything happened at once. A crowd of young girls, laughing and chattering, came out of the palace, began running gaily through the garden and down the steps. You see which one looks a little bit different? Hold the picture really close. "What did I tell you?" whispered Miriam. "Here comes the princess. She's the tallest one." Naturally. "She's seen the basket," said her mother softly. "Look, she's sending a servant to fetch it." See, she notices there's something down there. They hardly dared to look as the baby was laid in the princess's arms. He was crying. "Isn't he beautiful?" the princess said. "He must be one of the Hebrew babies. Oh, poor little thing. He's hungry. He still needs his mother's milk." Then Miriam stepped bravely out of the reeds and went straight to the princess. She fell to her knees and said, "Your Highness, shall I call one of the slave women to come and nurse the baby for you?" The princess smiled at Miriam. She seemed to understand. "Yes, child, go," she said. Miriam ran back and fetched her mother, who came and knelt before the princess. "I will pay you to feed the child until he's old enough to come back to me," said the princess, placing the baby in his mother's arms. "Then I shall raise him as my own son. He will be a prince, and I shall call him Moses, because it means drawn from the water, picked up out of the water." And that's Moses. Isn't it kind of interesting how Moses, the greatest leader in the entire Torah, and he doesn't even have like a Hebrew name or a Jewish name. He has an Egyptian name. And so since it's his name, it becomes a Jewish name too. So it's Jewish and Egyptian. Pretty cool. When they were safely home again, Miriam's mother stared at her with tears of joy in her eyes. "It all happened as you said it would," she said. "Yes," said Miriam. And she picked up her drum and began to sing and dance just as she would do many years later when Moses led the Hebrew slaves out of Egypt into freedom of a land of milk and honey. Miriam was a prophetess. That means that she could know things that were going to happen. that God wanted her to know. So, the Moses basket. I'm glad I got to read that. So, it's the Passover story. You know the Passover story, but there's some other little stories about Passover mixed in there, and the pictures are really cool. So that's the Passover story, as we say, that happened long, long, long time ago. But what about Passover right now? That's one I'm going to read, not the whole thing, pieces of Passover around the world, because while the Passover story itself is the same pretty much everywhere, and everyone has to eat matzah and nobody can eat chametz, like all the stuff, bread and that kind of a thing, how people celebrate Passover actually is different all over the world, and there are Jews all over the world, and they all celebrate Passover in their own special way. So I wanted to show you some of the cool ways that people celebrate Passover. And my dog has wandered in here, and he knows there's challah. He's sniffing around. So let's see if we can finish this book, or at least, finish the parts I wanted to read. Pretend he's not there. So there's a lot of different countries listed in here. So we don't even have time to do all of them, but I want to show you some of the more interesting things. And maybe some of these things are things that you do in your own Seder, which is really cool. There's so many cool traditions. The first thing I want to show you is from Gibraltar. Gibraltar, what does that even mean? This is Spain and Portugal. Up here is France and Britain. Down here is Africa. So this is all Europe. This is all Africa. And there's one little point where they actually come almost together. See, they're almost touching. See? So close, so close. But they're not quite touching. And that area is called Gibraltar. And there are Jews there, and they have a really interesting kind of tradition. Think about how you make Corrosive. I bet you don't make it like that. Maybe not. Maybe you do. So, Miriam Pariente knows the answer to, can you imagine eating a brick? It's a secret she shares with her grandmother, Sarah Benati, who comes from Gibraltar. The Benatis first settled there in the 1730s. They have lots of unusual Passover customs they've handed down from one generation to the next. One of their traditions has to do with Sukkot and Passover. They take their lulav and they save it. Months and months ago was Sukkot. Can you imagine? And they keep it and they burn it in the oven to make the fuel, to make it nice and hot to bake their matzah. The other thing they do involves a brick. Every year, Miriam's grandmother reminds her how Pharaoh forced the Hebrew slaves to make bricks. We just read about that. That's why we eat Corrosive, she explains. It reminds us of the mortar, the sticky stuff the slaves used to lay the bricks on top of each other so they stick together. Miriam helps gather the ingredients for making Grandma Sarah's Corrosive recipe. This is what she uses. Maybe it's the same as yours. Maybe it's different. Grandma Sarah's Corrosive recipe is dates, apples, nuts, almonds, bananas, wine, sugar, cinnamon. Once the ingredients have been mixed to the right thickness, her grandmother says, "Go get the brick." The first time her grandmother told her to do this, Miriam's eyes popped open wide as she watched Mrs. Benati break a few pieces off the brick and crush them into powder. When her grandmother added the finely ground up brick dust into the Corrosive, Miriam let out a gasp. Her grandmother held her close. It's my secret for helping us remember how difficult a life our ancestors had. Which is true. That's a real thing. Some people take little bits of brick dust and mix it into the Corrosive. Not so much you'd get sick, of course, but you know it's in there. Do you put brick dust in your Corrosive? Probably not. And we've got, Turkey. This is a fun one. So Turkey, here's Israel. And if you go north, we have the country of Turkey. And in Turkey, it's not known for having a lot of Jews, but there actually are Turkish Jews. Knock, knock, giggles Albert Behar. Who's there? His sister Rebecca answers with a broad smile. The two burst into laughter, jumping up and down, shouting, "It's Padre's turn tonight." Padre. Padre is the Spanish word for father. Spanish. Rabbi Fort, didn't you just say that this story takes place in Turkey? I did. Padre is the Spanish word for father. It's also the word for father in Ladino, the Sephardic Jewish language based on Spanish, with words from Hebrew, Turkish, French, Italian, and Arabic. In Turkey, where Albert and Rebecca live, Ladino is spoken within the family. It means that when they're at home, they speak Ladino, and when they're out and about, they speak Turkish. The twins have very good reason to be excited. Their father has been chosen to act out the play at the beginning of tonight's Seder. They act out a play. The Torah says everyone who's a parent has to teach their children the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And so to fulfill the commandment, the Behar family chooses a different adult each year to put on a short skit before they begin reading from the Haggadah. This tradition is followed by many Jewish families in Turkey and other countries around the Sephardic world. So this is actually at their Seder. Psst, Albert whispers to his sister. Rebecca looks up and sees him pointing at a small, soft suitcase. They wink at each other knowingly. Padre's costume is inside and a tall stick is resting on the wall next to it. Children, it's time to bathe and get dressed. Coming, Madre. They skip in the direction of their mother's voice. She's laid out new holiday clothing on their beds. Taking turns, they shower and dress, and soon they hear Padre's entering the house. Shalom, shalom, is anyone home? He calls out, sounding as though he is rehearsing for tonight's play. At Uncle Yitzhak and Aunt Rachel's home, they're greeted with warm hugs and kisses on both cheeks. 2 kisses. 20 family members, 20, sit around the Seder table. Uncle Yitzhak sits at the head, and Padre is next to him. The Seder begins. As Uncle Yitzhak is about to remove the middle matzah from the Seder table, Rebecca catches Padre slipping out the front door. What do you think's going to happen? Uncle Yitzhak breaks the matzah, places the afikomen in a special napkin with a pocket, and he passes it to the children. Hide it well, he cautions, adding, now let's begin reading the Haggadah. Suddenly a loud knock is heard at the front door. Uncle Yitzhak is startled. Startled. Who could that be? He asks. He gets up and opens the front door wide for all to see. It's a man wearing a long biblical robe tied at the waist. A flowing white cloth with a braided black rope circles his head. The man is holding a stick over his shoulder with a bundle tied to it. Where are you coming from? Asks Uncle Yitzhak. From the land of Egypt, answers the traveler. Uncle Yitzhak acts surprised. What? You're no longer a slave? He exclaims, now I am a free man, the visitor says proudly. And where are you going? Persists Uncle Yitzhak. With a broad smile, the man pauses before answering, I am going to Jerusalem. A burst of applause can be heard from around the table. Everyone is so glad to be able to hear this news. Happiest of all are Albert and Rebecca. They jump off their seats, they run to the man and lead him to the table. He tussles their hair. Good job, Albert whispers in his padre's ear. That's a really cool tradition that lots and lots of Jews do, especially the ones from Turkey. They actually act out the play while they're doing it, which is really cool. At Ethiopia. Now we're actually in Africa. It's a part of Africa that's kind of near where Israel's kind of like up here-ish. And this is Ethiopia. And Aviva Avero is 4 years old when she left Meraiva, her village in Ethiopia. She remembers the difficult journey she made on foot. She walked. It's crazy. True story. Real thing. Actually happened. She walked on foot with her family, first to Khartoum, Sudan, and then to an outlying desert area where planes took off for Israel. I'm tired, she complained during the long ordeal. Her grandfather understood. Hugging her close, he smiled. This year, we are finally going to Jerusalem. Grandfather was a very old man. While they walked, can you imagine? While they walked, he retold stories about Jerusalem that the Kes told every year at the Passover Seder held in the village synagogue. Every Jewish community in Ethiopia has a Kes, a great rabbi and leader. Aviva remembers the way her grandfather listened carefully to the instructions of the Kes as he prepared for Passover. On the morning before the Seder, her father, grandfather, and the other village members brought a lamb to the Kes. Wow, this is like straight out of the Torah. This is the lamb that the Kes will sacrifice for the Passover meal, according to the laws of the Torah, they explained. After he slaughters it, we'll roast it, and tonight in the synagogue we'll arrange the meat on a large tray in front of the Kes. Alongside of it will be a bowl of round matzah made by the village women. So it's a collaborative effort. Everybody's helping out. When the Seder is over, we will burn any remaining meat since we're not allowed to eat it tomorrow. There are no Haggadot. There is not one Haggadah, not one Haggadah in Ethiopia. No Seder place with maror, Corrosive, or egg. The Kes read the Passover story from the Torah. from a long, thick book that looked nothing like a Torah scroll. This Torah was not written in Hebrew. Not written in Hebrew, but in Ge'ez, a holy language known only to the Kes. Aviva remembers that last Seder night in Ethiopia. The whole community gathered in the synagogue. The Kes sat in the front. Once he finished reading the story, members of the community appointed as servers gave each person some grilled lamb and a piece of matzah. They ate it while drinking chilka, a drink prepared from honey, water, a little salt, ground up sesame seeds, and another kind of sesame seeds, basically. As they munched their special Passover food, they listened to the Kes tell stories about Jerusalem. Imagine what the homes look like in Jerusalem, what people will do, what we will do in Jerusalem. Aviva smiles remembering this because she no longer has to imagine what Jerusalem is like. And now, pretty much all the Ethiopian Jews live in Israel. There's a pretty decently large community of them. This is a really cool book. It goes on, talks about the Jews who are from India and what they do. They do all sorts of cool stuff, and what else we got? The traditions in Israel and the kibbutzim, the traditions of the Jews from Iran. Super cool. There's so many fun things in here. I don't have time to read you all of them, but they're really, really cool. And I just wanted you to know that there's lots and lots of different really, really interesting and cool, and they're different, but they're all celebrating Passover. And Jews all around the world, we might look different, and we might speak different languages, and we might not ever look at the other one and go, "You look like a Jew," but actually, anyone can be a Jew. Anyone can be a Jew. But no matter what, we're all Jews, and we all are celebrating going out of Egypt, going out of slavery and difficulty and tough times, going into freedom and happiness and joy, and being able to be Jewish and not be scared. That's a really exciting thing when you're Jewish. So I hope you enjoyed this quick, keeping an eye on the time, double-header. Where did my dog go? He's literally under my chair. I can't angle this down, but I don't know how he got under. He's not that small a dog. Okay, well, that's a choice. So thank you for joining me for the Moses basket, the story of Passover with some really, really cool illustrations, and also Passover around the world, because Jews all over the world celebrate Passover in different ways, and they bring their traditions even if they have to leave one country and go to another country, go to Israel, go to America, and everything becomes all blended up, and it's really fun. So now I'm excited to do a blessing over all the girls and boys. So if you are a girl watching this and you're here with a parent, or you're there with your parent or grandparent, and you'll let them put a hand on your head, now is the time. If you're just watching by yourself and you are the little girl, you can put a hand on your own head. And over all of our girls, I will say, Yisimech Elohim Kisara Rivka Rachel V'Leah. May God make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And if you are a little boy and you're watching this with a parent or grandparent or somebody, and you'll let them put a hand on your head, that'd be nice. Or if you're watching by yourself, you can put a hand on your own head. Give yourself the blessing. There's no reason you can't do it. So over all of our boys, I say, Yisimech Elohim K'Ephraim and Menashe. May God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. And over all of our children, so give yourself a night. If you're by yourself, nice big hug. I'm by myself, with the exception of the dog who's like literally snoring under my chair. I hope you can't hear that. Or if you're watching this with a parent or grandparent, or they can give you a hug, nice big family hug. So for all of our children, I'll say, may God bless you and protect you. May God shine the divine face towards you always. May God give you the blessings that all of God's children get, especially that of shalom, that of peace. And let us all say, Amen. And now it's come time for the Kiddush and the Motzi. So we're going to, it's a very large challah, and it's just taking up like a lot of room. I have like a little table right here, and it just takes up a ton of space. So I don't know how I'm going to eat all this challah, actually. But anyway, so if you have your grape juice, your wine, if you drink wine, maybe you're too young, so maybe just grape juice is a good idea. We will say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. You can say Amen. Always delicious. And now, I felt a little weird reading all these Passover books with a gigantic challah, but you can't actually eat matzah this close to Passover, because Passover is only a few weeks away. When we're that close to Passover, you're actually not allowed to eat matzah technically. we want the taste of matzah when you have it at the Seder to be fresh and be, oh wow, matzah. So for that reason, you can eat matzah all year round actually, but then you have to kind of be cut off before Passover. So we're in that time, you can't eat matzah right now. So if you've got a challah, great. There's a dent in it. Paid good money for this challah. There's a dent in it. What a day. So if you have a challah, dented or undented, you can get that now. If you do not have any actual challah, you can get some pretend challah, some pretend brioche, some pretend tortillas. You can get some pretend whatever you like. Some of the last challah before Pesach. Gonna miss it. So over our bread, we will say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And you can say Amen. It's like a loaf of bread, but, braided. Thank you so much for joining me for this very special double feature story time with Rabbi Fort, with myself. I didn't introduce myself at first. I'm hoping by this point you know who I am. We had double feature because we're coming up on Passover, and that's a really exciting thing. So we had two books. We had The Moses Basket with its really cool illustrations, and Passover Around the World with so many cool stories about different Jewish communities all over the world, in Africa, in Europe, in Latin America. We didn't even get through all of it. India, everywhere. So cool. So many cool things. So no matter how you celebrate Passover in your home, I hope you have a wonderful Passover. I hope you have a safe Passover. I hope you have a joyous Passover, even if it's maybe a little different than Passovers in the past. Maybe it doesn't look the way you used to Passover looking, or you want Passover to look. But the point is that even when things get difficult, Passover story teaches us, even when things are difficult, eventually, one day they will be good again. And that's a good reminder for the Passover story, and it's a good reminder for right now. So I hope you have a wonderful Shabbat as well, with lots of joy, lots of rest, and eat as much chametz as you can, because in a couple weeks, no more chametz. So